Last night, NFL Network had a big schedule release show, so we found out the complete 2025 schedule for the New Orleans Saints. Honestly, I think there was a whole lot there or that we didn't already know and could have already talked about at this point, except for maybe one thing that I think is kind of important, and that's the whole no primetime games for the Saints this year. A lot of people are a little up in arms about it, but spoiler alert, I am not. I am perfectly okay with it, and I'll tell you why. I'm Tim. Let's talk Saints. So, what did we know going in on the schedule? I think the biggest thing we knew that all along has been kind of sitting out there is you only have 4 games against playoff teams, and it's actually only 3 playoff teams on your schedule because you got the Bucks twice, you got the Bills, and you got the Rams. And you have a near miss playoff team in the Seahawks. They were 10-7 also and lost out to the Rams on tiebreaker for the division. So, all honesty, I think you could add them as a playoff caliber type team, if not an actual playoff team, because they literally just missed. Biggest problem with the schedule is you only have one of those games at home. It's against Tampa Bay. You're on the road for the rest of them. And you're on the road in places where it's typically tough to play in Buffalo and Seattle. And the Rams look, man, the Rams have just had our number for so long. It's like it seems like anytime they're just one of those teams, anytime they're on our schedule, you're like, geez, maybe we can finally pull one out. But we haven't done it in a while. I think the fact that a little less than a third of our schedule um, are these teams, these 5 games, I think they just look unwinnable right now on paper. Now, it's May and we don't play the game on paper, so grain of salt, this is probably a little early, but just the first reaction to the schedule when it came out, and we've been knowing these games there the whole time. It's just you keep looking at them going, the more uncertainty that we've added to this team, tougher those games are going to be because it's a combination of who you play and in large degree where you play them. And of those unknowns, the biggest one, the one that is in the mix mash of all this that creates pretty much all the uncertainty. I think we kind of know where we are and everything else in the team, good or bad. Quarterback play for the Saints. We do not know what we're going to get. We're going with a young quarterback as of right now, and it you know we bring a veteran in. I don't see it happening before minicamp, to be honest with you, but you never know, and I don't know if that's going to happen at all. But you're basically rolling out 13 games against established quarterbacks, so you're coming in with a huge unknown. Atlanta twice with Penix and Carolina twice with Young. Now, grain of salt with what you got from both of those last year. They both went on heaters at the end of the season. Will it carry over? Or they're young quarterbacks too. So you just never know. Maybe they wind up in situations they were in earlier the last couple of years that comes quarterback, or if they roll out and those two young men were for real at the end of the year, and that's what they go up with, puts us in a bad position. Tampa Bay Mayfield's been awesome for the last 2 years, but you're also dealing with now Caleb Williams, who last year you probably wouldn't have been sweating a whole lot, but this year with the addition of Ben Johnson over there, it's kind of like, oh crap, that may be a huge difference maker for the way he plays. Outside of that, it's Murray, Purdy, Josh Allen, Derek May, who also kind of ended the season on a banger for the Patriots, Stafford and Tua. So I mean, with our uncertainty, you're looking at whatever degree of play they're going to have on the teams that they're going to play for, and we'll get to that in a minute, a little bit. Um, you, you're going to look at that and go, man, they clearly have the QB edge. And it's 3 teams with veteran quarterbacks that are showing up. We'll see how that plays out. But Sam Darnold with the Seahawks, Russell Wilson with the Giants, and Justin Fields with the Jets. But it's somewhat established veterans, and all of them coming off pretty decent seasons after having some problems with success in previous seasons in some way, shape, or form, all three of them. So maybe a little uncertainty there coming to the new teams, but still probably a lot more questions answered going into the season, especially right now than we have. So you really only have one game against an unknown. It's against the Titans. First overall pick, Cam Ward. First off, overall pick for a reason, and you get him week 17. So I think, look, quarterback play is one of the most, if not the most, hugely important thing in the NFL. And you may be able to get around a series of games, or if your team is super talented at every position, get by with a little lower level of quarterback play and still win a lot of games. Yeah, I don't think we're in that position. So this is the question mark, and it's going to be whatever quarterback wins the job and shows up and gives us some. I'm not expecting a super high level play out of any of them. You never know; it may turn out that way, but you got to get something out of them because if you don't, it's going to be problematic. So if you're trying to find, we won 5 games last year, and that seems to be where everybody probably the over and under, would be 4.5 or 5.5, kind of dependent if you're optimistic or not. So finding 6+ wins based off the quarterback play, you're going to have a very difficult time. So where does that leave you? Well, two other things we knew: Saints are going to have to run the ball, and it really didn't matter who was going to play quarterback for this team. The Saints have to run the ball. Now, it's going to help a younger quarterback if you can do it, get some play action, take some pressure off of them, hopefully keep them out of long, problematic down and distance situations. But no matter who the QB was going to be, veteran or not, you got to look on the other side of the ball. And that's where I think the real problem is. That was a bottom 5 defense last year, and it's aging, and there's only so much they could do to try to fix those issues rolling this season. A slight increase. Say if you got into the bottom 5, if you went from 30th probably or worse overall to 25, it's not going to move the marker a whole lot in helping you win games, which your question marks on offense, especially at the quarterback position. And again, this is all stuff we knew before last night when they revealed the schedule. It's got to be a big jump. I just don't know if you're going to see it. And that even more have to run the ball now. So not only to help your young quarterback out, keep that defense off the field as much as possible. In a way, you almost have to try to win games dirty. It's not going to look pretty if you can come away with some wins on this schedule, unless the quarterback play hits. And honestly, that's just the big question mark in the whole deal. And we're a long, long, long way away, months from being able to answer how that quarterback play is going to shake it out and the difference one way or the other, because it will make a difference one way or the other. But in a case of looking hopeful on what we already know, you still have teams on this schedule, obviously, because we're on a last place schedule, that struggled as much as we did last year. You can put the Jets, the Patriots, the Titans, the Giants, the Bears, and 49ers all in that category. And the Panthers twice. You have a fair amount of games that I think there's no guarantees here one way or the other, largely because, yes, we just talked about on paper, they're all going to have better quarterback play than us, except maybe the Titans, but their young quarterback is supposedly way better than our young quarterbacks. We'll see. There's no guarantee anyway on any of these games, but I think you can safely say they have as many or almost as many questions to answer this offseason than we do. So even playing field out a little bit, I think the difference maker for most of them, when you look at it, is what we just previously talked about. They're all expected to bring better quarterback play than we're going to have. And all things being equal, if we roll into a game where they don't have much defense and they're able to run the ball too, we're still coming down to whose quarterback's going to play the best and be able to help their team make the most plays. But that is 7 games that realistically, right now, again, on paper in May, should be able to stay in those games and give yourself a shot to pull them out. Now, once you get through this OTA minicamp process and especially start getting into training camp preseason, our questions, their questions, you may start getting some answers, good or bad, because just because you answer a question and what we're talking about, it could be a bad answer, and you're like, "Oh crap!" But you get a better idea, and I think these are the 7 games you're going to have to kind of look at and go, "You want to have 6+ wins or really make any type of challenge coming down? You got to steal as many of these as you possibly can because the other side of the schedule is going to be just a little tougher. Not counting those 5 games we talked about against playoff caliber teams from 2024. The Saints, look, I think that the answer that they have to come up with first and foremost, quarterback. I'm not saying it's not the most important, but offensive line and that defense. The defense, whatever they're able to put out there, is got to be better because I can confidently say this. I don't see any way we can throw an offense out there this season that can overcome a defense that puts us anywhere in the positions the defense last year kept putting us in, especially late in the season. So what we know is scary, and there's no doubt about it. But it's not hopeless, at least not yet. So what we kind of learned last night, I think the biggest thing is we're playing all our games on Sundays. There's no primetime games, not even a Sunday night game. Um, this has been viewed at largely from what I saw last night and a little bit this morning. Um, you know, it's a lack of respect towards the Saints, an indication of how bad and basically uninteresting they're going to be this year in 2025. And I don't think I can argue vehemently against either one of those things, but I don't think it matters to me because I see this as a positive. And the main reason why I'm seeing this as a positive is look, one of the biggest things you can hear awful lot, especially during the course of the season, especially when like Thursday night games come up or Monday night games, the changing of the routine. Okay. It seems like everybody more or less agrees that NFL coaches and players are creatures of habit and keep the routine the same as much as you can throughout the season, the better off it is for your team. I would argue that this is going to be a team with a lot of young players, potentially some rookies, some near rookies. I think stability of a routine, especially you're adding new coaching staff on top of that, brand new coaching staff. Routine is going to be a big issue to kind of. I don't know if it's going to help you win any more games than not, but I think it's going to help you. There's a lot going on here about changing the culture, as well as developing the team, developing the young talent, figuring stuff out. I think a routine schedule for 18 weeks from when you kick it off to the last regular season game is played crucial for a team in this situation. A veteran team with a great roster, they don't probably generally they still hate having to deal with a break in the routine because of primetime games that can cause. They're better equipped to deal with it. I don't think this team necessarily is not like you would normally want. So I think it's just better off. Don't even fool with that. We know we're playing every Sunday. It's either going to be in a dome or it's going to be on the road, and it's going to be roughly at 12 o'clock or 3 o'clock windows. I think that's actually a good thing for this team right now. I think the second thing is, and I haven't heard really anybody mention this, with veterans we're going to have on this team, we're going to have to rely on, and a lot of them we have talked about declining, getting up there. A lot of NFL seasons already logged in, not outside the major unlucky injuries. A lot of them dealt with injuries or just getting banged up, or I think even at the end of the season, there's a couple that were just getting worn down somewhat. Um, and we're avoiding in the primetime games, and this is the one that kind of pissed me off last year, and it really hit in the prime of our injury issues that derailed the season. Although the schedule wasn't all to blame for that, it didn't help when we had to play 3 games in 10 days. None of that. We're like clockwork every 7. So I think that'll help the veterans out a lot. And let's be honest. You keep some of these veterans that start having injury problems last year, even though some of them, like Honey Badger, tried to gut it out and didn't really miss, a game. They were missing parts of games due to this stuff. When you start having those short windows of playing Thursday night games and all that craziness, and again, like I said, those 3 games in 10 days that we had can't I think it started with the Kansas City Monday night game in that area and finished with the Denver Thursday. I was just brutal. I was just brutal. So we're going to avoid that. That could help the vets out a lot. And even if it doesn't necessarily turn into wins, keeping the vets on the field is going to be a big part. These veterans that you're counting on, bringing these young guys along and developing that you're going, okay, it's a rebuild. We got to make sure, try to, you can't rebuild for 2, 3, 4, 5 years anymore in the NFL if you ever could. But a lot of these guys are going to, if we can't quite get them where we need them to be in 2025, they have to be where we need them to be in 2026, especially since some of the veterans that are going to be helping them probably won't be on this roster in 2026. So I'm hopeful that again, the routine every 7 days on Sundays, no, no midweek games, no Sunday night game, nothing to shorten that up in the long run could be beneficial. uh, we get the rebuild going and the team turned around and going back in the right direction, then we can start worrying about playing those Thursday and Monday nights and all that. But I think for right now, we're good. We're good. I think that's one of the things on this schedule that sets up nicely for us. The last thing I think this is worth mentioning, and I can't believe I haven't done it before, kind of in the last um, several videos where at some point this off season about the I'm starting to become a bit of a believer in the new coach effect. Um, my term. I don't think anybody else uses it. But I think a lot of times when you bring in a coaching change, you kind of get this little boost, almost like in drag racing, the nitrous boost that gives you a quick burst. That's not sustainable over long distance, not over 17 games in a season, but kind of get you kick started in a way. And I think we saw that really twice last year. I think that the offensive change of Kubiak in those first 2 games was just off the charts. It was a bit of a mirage, we found out, but not totally. There was a lot of good stuff that we did do in those 2 games that did carry over to other parts of the season, um, especially the running game. That was kind of one of the bright spots we more or less had on offense last year throughout the season. Um, Rizzy, when he came in as interim, kind of had that banger 3-2 start with a couple of those losses. You're going, if not, but we had a chance in those too. And if he starts off 5-0, like everything changes on so many levels, but he didn't. But I think the pace of play in those 5 games were really, really good and looked really good, even in the losses. And then we just kind of fell off those last 3 games where it wasn't really good at all. So I think it is kind of almost a shot of adrenaline, or just that shot of pure excitement, not only players but fan base. And I think because we kind of got re-energized a lot as a fan base when Rizzy was named interim, and I think it carried over. The dome was a definite different place, and those I was at the Cleveland game, the second one of it. It was completely different than the couple I had attended earlier in the year. Trust me. So I think that's a real thing, and I think that can maybe kind of carry you through those first 2 games, especially since in those first 2 games, and I think this is another part of where coaching changes, newer coaches coming in can make a difference. NFL teams, by and large, general, as we talked about earlier, when they break routine, kind of freaks them out. Another thing that kind of freaks them out is anything involving kind of unknowns and unpredictability. They like having film, they like having trends, they like when new things are coming in. And I think this definitely played out in the first 2 weeks last season. And Rizzy made some changes that I think had the immediate impact for that 3-2 start of his interim. Eh, You can get a game or 2 or more possibly of that being because you're I don't know if you're catching teams off guard necessarily, but maybe they play it safe or a little bit a lot of their basic stuff. They don't maybe get too exotic because they, you know, it's hard to say, but exactly why that effect comes. But I think it can carry over if you can kind of get that. Um, where and I'm thinking a lot of those first two games last year, talking about changing the Kubiak offenses, we were kind of catching the Panthers and Dallas off guard in some of those games. But it was almost like they were like, "Look, we know what Kubiak wants to do, but what will it look like? How do we defend it?" Type thing. That's the best way I can explain it. I think you may get some of that carryover the first 2 weeks when you're looking at Arizona and Frisco, with the benefit of, while they may be changing personnel, by and large, they're pretty much more or less the same coaching staff in place. So I think game planning, play calling, you're going to have something to work off of. Where if you're lining up against the Saints those first couple of weeks, I mean, you have some of that in Kellen Moore's previous stops, but you don't have any of it with the Saints. And then after about 2 or 3 games, you start getting film, and that's when the unpredictability, I guess, the uncertainty, the unknown, or whatever that the NFL defense don't particularly like, and even NFL offenses, kind of the gaps start getting filled in. And then you, know, you have the chance of, that's where I think the new coaching effect kind of goes away, because now it's circulating around the NFL. They have an understanding. They have a better idea of what you're trying to do, how you're going to try to do it. So they have a much better idea of how they're going to try to stop it. Goes for either side of the ball. So just wanted to throw that out there going, maybe if you sneak one of those first two games out, God forbid both, and they are at home, does that give you a little boost to maybe kind of carry on? Because I think, again, need the quarterback play. You need to be able to run the ball, and that defense has to show up and get a lot better. And that's your three big question marks, that if you answer all three of them with, yeah, we're going to get good quarterback play. Yeah, we're going to run the ball when we want to, and we're going to do it effectively. And the defense will at least be able to keep us in close games where we have a chance to pull them out. And you're looking at, adding 6+ wins. I think it makes it a lot more doable. But the more no's stack up on that question, and again, we kind of knew all this before the schedule, more problematic it is. But I think on the face of it, the schedule kind of helps. Kind of helps us with that game every Sunday routine. Hopefully, a better chance to keep the preventable stuff from happening, and not not putting some veterans in a position where they might wear down a little faster, having to play multiple games over 3 and 10 days, as we said. So see how it turns out. And these questions are going to start getting answered. We're getting into OTAs. We're getting into mini camp. We'll have a break, training camp. We will see and hear more and more and kind of figure out. And that's not counting, you know, before we sign off, let's mention there's still a lot of money there, and there are some free agents available, and the Saints could make some more moves, before we kick the ball off against Arizona. So we'll see how it all shakes out. First time here, you liked what you saw, please give me that thumbs up. Let's feed that algorithm. Let's keep it happy. Sure, you hit the subscribe notification so you know where we are. I am trying really, really, really hard this is Thursday, get back to Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I think I've said that like 3 or 4 videos in a row. See how it pans out. But I think as it stands right now, you talk about routine. I think we're kind of getting into routine now of finishing out the offseason process, seeing where we're standing. Any subsequent roster moves that be made somewhere between mini camp and training camp, if it happens. I think that's everything we're looking at for now, which is pretty much, I think, what you would normally expect at this point in the offseason. So, and we all know how the Saints like to throw curveballs, so we'll see what happens. So, till I see you next time, I'm Tim. Peace out, and who dat.